What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the What the Fun Show and the Rogue Podcast, a Star Wars show. I know this is a little different. I'm not anybody you know from the Rogue Podcast, and you don't know who I am if you're listening on the Rogue Podcast, but you do know this familiar voice. Jake, how's it going tonight?
Hey, Mike, going really good. And guys, we're going to be doing a co-show today with What the Fun, so really excited about this. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, as Jake said, we are doing a co-branded show. We're going to be releasing it both on each of our feeds, I think maybe just YouTube channel on Jake's side, potentially audio, but definitely audio on our side, and maybe some clips for the YouTube channel. But yeah, today we're going to talk about the state of Star Wars. And so May the 4th be with you, because this is releasing on Thursday, May the 4th. So you excited for May the 4th?
I'm really excited. I've already told my students about I'm a math teacher, and I already told my students about my plans for the day. My AP Stats kids have their test, their AP exams to determine whether they get college credit or not. So I've already told them that the 4th will be with them and all that stuff.
Okay.
So
all right. There you go. There you go. Getting in the mood. Yep. So yeah, just a little bit of an intro here. Please leave us a review. If you're on either of our YouTube channels, please go ahead and subscribe. If you're on the audio feeds, go ahead and subscribe there, follow. Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review there. If you're on Spotify, you can leave a review on the mobile app only. It's a star rating there, so go and do that. A little bit of housekeeping for you guys. For the What the Fun side, we have recently been doing a lot of Test Your Might stuff, which is our video game debate show, so go and check that out. We also have a Super Mario Brothers review that just came out, and then this week as well, if you're listening to my voice, we should have a review of Dead Poet Society, which is a part of our favorite movie series. So keep that in mind. And then housekeeping for the Rogue Podcast, if you're interested in that, I do see recently that Jake, you streamed some Jedi Survivor the other night.
I did. It didn't go great. It was struggling to keep up with all of the graphics that are in the game, but they released a patch today, so I'm hoping that streaming will be a little bit easier going forward.
Okay, so yeah,
we don't usually stream.
But I did notice that you were live playing that game. So hopefully, you guys who listen to the Rogue Podcast go over onto the YouTube channel and check out Jake's stream. So you got one playthrough so far. So I'm sure. Are you going to play the whole game on stream, or?
I played a few hours yesterday with Rachel, so I wasn't able to hook up my whole streaming service, but I didn't go far in the game. I mostly just explored. So the goal is to play through the whole game on stream. So if you guys are interested, I don't stream often, so it's a little awkward, but I had some people join, and we had some fun conversations about Star Wars while I was playing. So if you want to hop in and see what the game looks like, maybe get a little bit of a review that way, feel free. So hope to see you guys there.
Awesome. Go ahead and check that out. Again, all the links will be down below in our descriptions. Okay, Jake, so I had this idea to have you on. First of all, it's been a long time since I've talked Star Wars on a podcast, so I'm very excited about that.
I can't say the same.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you guys do every week. But I just wanted to, I have a lot of opinions about the state of Star Wars. I've been a fan for probably as long as you, probably longer than you, because I think I'm a little older than you.
Sure.
But you're definitely a little bit more averse in everything as far as Star Wars versus me. So let's talk about the state of Star Wars and where it's at. So just to start our conversation, I want to ask you, how are you feeling about the Star Wars universe right now? Like, what do you see going forward? Like, are you in a good spot feeling wise, or is it rough?
It's such a bag of mixed emotions.
Yeah.
The level of inconsistency in Star Wars right now is just insane, because you get one day you're watching Tales of the Jedi, which came out last year, and you're like, this is amazing, I can't wait to see what they do going forward. And then they give you the Kenobi show, and you're like, this is absolutely terrible, and you just can't get on board with it at all. And then you can see Andor, and you're like, wow, that was awesome. And then you've been super excited for 2 years of The Mandalorian, or 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, you get a 2-year gap. Season 3 looks great, trailer's super exciting, excited to see what happens. And then it just is a big letdown, in my opinion. So the inconsistency is difficult. I mean, I'm always super hopeful. If there's anything Star Wars has taught me, is the word hope is in it like 5,000 times. Yeah. So I'm always hopeful for the next project. But there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Cautious optimism, I guess is the word.
Okay.
That I kind of approach with Star Wars. Like every project, I'm going to give it a shot. I have issues with some things here and there, but on my podcast, I'm probably the most hopeful of the four of us. Is just, I want things to be good so bad and I want to enjoy it. So when I do go into something, I'm saying, you know what? I might not like this director so much, or I might not like some things that they've done in the past, but I'm excited to see what happens. Like with the Leslie Headland project coming up, Star Wars or Sith Acolyte, or I think it's just called Acolyte. Yeah. I'm really excited. I think the story, the time period sounds like an awesome story to explore, but I'm cautious because a lot of the stuff that she's done in the past has been just like activism for her causes, which whatever causes you have, I don't really care, but I still just want that to be a good story in what it is. So I'm excited for it, but I'm a little cautious. Is it going to be a good story, or is it going to be pushing agenda? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So whatever those agendas are, I couldn't care less, but I just want it to be a good story.
You just want it to be good Star Wars, right?
Exactly.
Like
good Star Wars is really all I care about.
Exactly. And, we talk about Andor, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later on. But I mean, Andor is the best Star Wars that I've seen in a long time. And for all intents and purposes, that's not Star Wars. Like there was no Jedi. There was no, there was the looming, there was the looming like threat of the Empire, obviously. And obviously Darth Vader's around. And Palpatine obviously too, but it was such a different take on what Star Wars could be in the media, and it was such a breath of fresh air.
And it's go ahead, sorry.
I was just about to say, I'm pushing back. I liked Kenobi.
You did, really?
And the reason being is because I love Ewan McGregor so much as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
He's fantastic.
And just like having him and having one, hopefully, having one more story of him and Vader was just icing on the cake for me. So I really enjoyed that. But you're about
those aspects, those aspects of the Kenobi show, I really enjoyed. A lot of the stuff that we saw between Vader and Kenobi was absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the name of the guy, but a fan made an edit actually, where he turned the 6-episode show into like a 2-hour movie. He cut out a lot of the stuff that I didn't like and put better music in that felt more like Star Wars. Like he just put in Star Wars music in replacement of a lot of the stuff that they had. Cut out a lot of the Reva scenes, because I'm not going to go as far as some people have gone to say that this show should have been called Reva or Inquisitor or something. Yeah. I don't think that it was that drastic, but I do think it spent a lot more time on her story than what we could have been spending with the perils of Kenobi and just the emotional struggle that he went through. But I think the main issue that I had with that show was not so much the overwhelming story. I felt like, or overarching story, I should say. That was fine. I mean, it makes sense that Kenobi would need to protect Leia and that Vader would be hunting him, the Inquisitors would be hunting him. That was fine. But a lot of the execution I had issues with. Like, for instance, Darth Vader creates this huge fire, drags Kenobi through it, and just amazing scene.
Yeah.
But then the Imperial officer girl, I don't remember her name, shoots the flaming minerals or whatever it was, makes the fire a little bit bigger, and suddenly Vader is like rendered useless. And I'm just like, that doesn't make sense for the character. You know what I mean?
You're right.
And just things like that take me out of the show so much that I just felt it wasn't a very well made show. Reva somehow teleporting across the map at times, just like, how in the world is she everywhere all the time?
Like, not to go on a huge Kenobi tangent, but that was my least favorite episode, because I thought the fight looked like it was like in my backyard, just like a pile of rocks in the back, just like, and there's just the one thing that Kenobi set a precedence for was at the beginning, at the very couple first episodes, was they had a fantastic setting. They had really good visuals, a really cool and awesome like city that Kenobi was involved in there. And then to sort of take that back and bring it to just this rock planet that's literally just like I could go.
Oh, you mean the final fight at the end?
Well, no. I'm talking about the mineral,
yes.
the fire scene that you're talking about too.
Yes.
It's just like it was just uninspired, like
Yeah. Well, and the combat itself doesn't look very good. And if you talk about the state of Star Wars, since Disney's taken over, I have felt that the lightsaber combat has just been very cosplay-esque. You know what I mean? Like the choreography has been really rough. I mean, the Kylo and Rey fights were, especially in Force Awakens. Granted, she wasn't untrained, but they're just not at the level of what we've seen in the past. And they've tried to put some story elements into it. I mean, the prequels, the Jedi with the height of their strength and the height of their power with proper training and stuff. But even just the emotional weight of things, I felt that the original trilogy, while the combat wasn't as exciting, the emotional weight you had behind every fight was incredible. And I just feel that the Disney Star Wars has lacked to find either one of those, the excitement of the lightsaber duels or the emotional weight of the lightsaber duels. So
I'm
that's
with
one
you.
aspect.
I'm with you to a certain extent. I think that in Rise of Skywalker as well as Force Awakens, the one thing that Disney got right was I felt the weight of those battles within the sound design. That's what they've gotten right. Mm-hmm. But yes, I do think that, I mean, you and we're prequel kids, right? So like we'll
always look back to the Duel of the Fates and Anakin
Duel of the
versus
Fates
Obi-Wan.
and like those are the quintessential lightsaber fights that really speak to what Star Wars is for us, and like that's really what it is. So I mean, for me, the state of Star Wars, my biggest thing is confusion, I think, right now. Because not only just to bring in what you said, but just like the sort of roller coaster of quality that we've been getting, but also like we grew up watching the movies, and for the movies to be in a place that I don't really care for right now, I'm really scared as to what the movies are going to present coming next.
Absolutely.
And I'm really confused about it because Rise of Skywalker, I don't know your opinion. I thought that movie was Star Wars as like hell. Like it was Star Wars. It was awesome. As far as Star Wars is concerned, the story was trash.
Oh yeah. First time I watched Rise of Skywalker, I was like, that was so much fun. It was a fun lightning Star Wars speed.
Exactly.
And then I was driving home and I was thinking about it. I was like, she found a knife that pointed to an exact spot on the Death Star that was created well before the Death Star was ever even built. And like oceans are going to shift where the Death Star lands. I was like, that is so stupid. And just everything else as I went through that movie, it was dumb. It was really dumb.
which gets back to my like the overall thing is that and Andor to me was a risk.
Absolutely huge risk.
Whatever your thoughts about The Last Jedi, it was a risk. Right. And that's what Star Wars is lacking right now. And even playing the project, safe too much.
I 100% agree. Even what George Lucas did when he first made the trilogy, everyone told him it wasn't going to work. No. And it was a huge risk. And he bet on himself. I heard a really funny story the other day about how when he gave the rights of Star Wars to fund it, the first movie was partially funded by Fox. But in the sub writing, essentially he said, if this movie does well, then I get the rights to subsequent films. So the money he made from episode 4, he used to make 5 and 6. And it just bet on himself, and it worked out. Yeah. And Star Wars is very much trying to appeal to as many people as possible right now. Mm-hmm. And they're dumbing down the story. And I think we saw that in Mandalorian Season 3 pretty heavily.
Yeah.
With that being said, Andor and Mando have two different goals.
No, yeah.
Andor was trying to tell an awesome story, and Mando is trying to be a fun week-by-week show that anyone can hop in and enjoy. Yeah. So if people are willing to accept that they're going to get two very different styles, then that's fine. Yeah. I like both shows. I personally have a huge preference towards the Andor type of storytelling, where the 100%. Characters get into great depth. But to address what you said earlier about the confusion, I very much agree with it, and that's what I kind of was hinting at with the inconsistency.
Yeah.
Star Wars right now is being made by so many people.
Oh,
so
yeah.
originally Lucasfilm had some head creatives, right? George Lucas was in charge of it all and oversaw everything. And then the EU with all the books and stuff was made by tons of people, and you had a lot of inconsistent quality there. I think kind of what we're seeing right now with Star Wars is like they're kind of saying the head of Star Wars right now is Kathleen Kennedy. She's kind of treating everything a little bit like the EU, I feel like, and giving all these projects to different people. And that's why we're seeing such a big disparity in quality of storytelling and cohesion. And it just doesn't have an overall vision. I think that's where the problem comes. Because like some of the things done by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are really good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And most of them, if not, are really good. I think Mando Season 3 is the first thing that I looked at that was done by these guys. I felt that's not great.
Yeah.
Boba Fett was given to the guy who does the Saw movies or Machete movies. I can't remember his name.
Forget his name. Trash.
Yep. But it was terrible, and I think that was more trash. Of a hands-off approach as well. It was so bad. With the exception of 2 episodes that were The Mandalorian that should have been in this season of The Mandalorian,
right?
Best and then you have the whole
that.
Exactly, and then you have the whole thing with end of season 2. You have this big emotional weight of Grogu being taken away from Mando, and then before we even get to season 3, Grogu's back. Yeah. And everything that they've done for 2 seasons, which was the whole point of it, was to get him to the Jedi, is erased. And this season of Mando could have been really good if they had that emotional weight of him being separated and had a huge moment where eventually they came back later on. But I think this idea of not having a vision of what you want to happen over a long period of time is really hurting, because I think that was originally a plan to end season 2, was for them to be separated for a while.
But also like or be separated or just never get back together.
Exactly.
Like it was a perfect end to a story. Yeah, they brought in Luke Skywalker, which I don't necessarily know they needed, but
it was cool. It was fun.
But it was awesome. I loved it because I mean that's Luke Skywalker, right?
Well, and it made sense for the story too.
It did, yes. But like I think that the season 1 and 2 of Mando, what showed me is that Din Djarin is a character that I think can hold a season himself. I did not. You don't need the Ahsoka Tano in that season 2. You don't need the Luke Skywalker. Those help. And honestly, I loved season 2. But also like the way that season 3 came about is that like they did this world building around Din Djarin for seasons 1 and 2, and then they sort of took that away in season 3.
Then he was kind of swallowed up by his own show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
and
for sure,
and that just kind of points toward what I'm trying to get at. Like you're taking a show that was originally the small scale show that's just adventure of the week kind of thing, and now you've turned it into this huge thing that is the centerpiece of what's going to be like a Avengers type thing. Talking about the state of Star Wars, Dave Filoni recently said that his movie that will be coming out in the upcoming years is essentially going to be a Star Wars Avengers with Mandalorian and Ahsoka and all these other people, probably fighting Thrawn is my guess, is the big bad.
Yeah.
But now you've made the Mandalorian this huge thing.
Yeah.
So it's no longer can it have that just fun, let's go have another adventure this week. It doesn't have a big part of the story. Because if it's building this huge story, each episode, especially if you have 8 of them, have to matter.
Yeah.
So I just think that it lacks direction. The success we saw with Marvel came from Kevin
Feige.
Yes, Kevin Feige having a great direction and idea of what he wanted to do and tell his directors, this is the movie you're going to make. It needs to accomplish these things. Do it the way you want to. I don't think we have that person right now. That person is Kathleen Kennedy. I just don't think she's doing a very good job. So I think that
well, neither is Kevin Feige right now.
He's not doing a great job either. Yeah, that kind of points to it, though, does it not? He had a very good plan of what he wanted to do. That plan was successfully executed.
Yes.
And then after that, they said, "All right, what now?" And we're kind of seeing the consequences of that.
100%. You know and the what now of Star Wars is following episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, which like doesn't doesn't have that good foundation to start off with. So yeah, the state of Star Wars right now is just like sort of confusion, I think, as we've both agreed and unclear as to what is going on moving forward. So let's transition into the movies specifically. So
Sure.
let's talk about this new Rey focused movie. So they recently just announced that Rey is getting a movie that is focused on her, with rumors stating that she's trying to rebuild the Jedi, and sort of do everything to make sure that The Last Jedi is a forgotten movie, essentially. What are your thoughts on this upcoming Rey movie?
I mean, aside from the fact that she's doing everything that Luke did in the books I read as a kid, that's the thing that hurts the most about it. But we kind of, again, point to the thing you talked about earlier, the confusion about where the movies are going. We have one movie going to after the sequel trilogy, one in between original and sequel, and then the 1,000 years in the past. So it kind of gives you a lack of direction and focus. So I don't love that idea. I wish they would have just kind of picked a time frame and said, this is what we're going to focus on and make a great story here. And then maybe sometime down the road, we'll move to a different one. But with the Rey movie specifically, I'm going to give it a chance. I'm not one of the people that hated the sequels and therefore hated Rey. I thought Rey was a very exciting character in The Force Awakens. I was very excited to see what her future was going to be as someone who did not know who they were, didn't know anything about themselves, and was starting to realize that she had Force sensitivity or the Force within her. But the upcoming movies really just undid a lot of that excitement that I had when they said, actually, she's a Palpatine and therefore all powerful. So I'm not saying it's impossible to fix her character.
She's a Skywalker, by the way.
Yeah, my bad. I meant to say Skywalker.
Call yourself a Star Wars podcaster. Come on now.
It's like episode 7, she's a nobody. Or she doesn't know who she is. Episode 8, Return of the Jedi, she's a nobody. Episode 9, actually she's a Palpatine. End of episode 9, actually she's a Skywalker.
That's the thing, though, is that like we bring that up, and just like Rey as a character, I really enjoyed. Like, and I thought her story was good up until the point they decided to pigeonhole her, and we're like, we need to connect this to the original trilogy somehow.
Right.
And what they did was write this super awful story that she is a Palpatine. When
don't forget, somehow Palpatine returned.
Yeah, not only did Palpatine return somehow, for sure, and speaking of Mando season 3, they sort of talk about that a little bit in one of the episodes. But I mean, aside from that, like, I don't understand that choice when literally the best choice that they had, they already wrote it. And that was for Rey to be a nobody, was to be a force-wielding user that was going to start the Jedi again. Like, that's literally your story.
Well, the Luke Skywalker story of him being the son of Vader was already done. And they just redid it. They redid it.
They did. But that was the problem. That goes back to what we were originally saying. There was a lack of focus. You switch directors to Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson takes a risk. He does not just reproduce Empire Strikes Back, which is what I feared was going to happen, because J.J. Abrams, although I think The Force Awakens was very needed in the way that it was presented, it was literally a new hope. I think it was needed to sort of bridge the gap and bring the generation.
It was a ton of fun.
Super ton of fun. Like, it was needed that way. But then Rian Johnson takes this risk, and I think does a really good job with it, besides the casino stuff. We'll forget those scenes. And then they go back to J.J. Abrams, and he's like, oh, Rise of, or whatever, that Last Jedi movie didn't work.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. So I'm going to write her as a Palpatine, and then she's going to be a Skywalker. And like, so the movies are just like, I think what they're doing is what you mentioned. I think what they're doing is the right thing. I think they need to move away from like this trilogy aspect, move away from everything needing to be connected. I think that there is a purpose and a good purpose at creating these like sort of different stories, different timelines that can stand on their own.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see if that works, and I hope it does. Like, Star Wars is such a huge galaxy. If you do pigeonhole into one time frame, it can be you can feel like you're missing out on a lot of stuff. And they
Yeah.
have enough studios to do tons of different projects, but they all need to be high quality. With this
Yeah.
movie specifically, the thing that I ask is that before they ever start working on it, they know exactly what they want to accomplish with it. Because that was the issue with the sequel trilogy. And if they want to make one movie and not do a trilogy, then make one movie and don't leave it open-ended to be able to make follow-up movies. Say, we're making one movie that explains how Rey restarts the Jedi Order. We may revisit this someday with other characters and the Jedi Order rebuilt so that we can tell more stories in the future as well. Because you don't want to just go in the past because we know how things ultimately end up.
100%.
If that's the path you want to take, that's fine. Make it one really good movie that does that. Talk about how Rey has grown, how she's become a master, the training that she's done, the training she gives other people. I'm cool with that. I think that has a possibility to be good. If you do want to have multiple movies, don't write just one movie and say, we can figure out where episodes 2 or whatever, 11, 12, and 13, whatever, go from there. Say, no, we're going to map out the next 50 years of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what has to happen, because if you just keep making the same mistakes, it's going to get so frustrating, because not J.J. Abrams, I forget the name of the girl that's doing this next Rey movie, but she's going to do this movie, and then you're going to hand it to some other Joe Schmo who will come in and do another movie and take his take on what would happen next. And if we see that same consistency, I think fans are just going to start getting fed up. You'll see Star Wars start to decline. So you have to have a vision.
Yeah, and you have to have the vision, because what we've brought up already, we've seen sort of the slippery slope of that is the fact that they had the Book of Boba Fett be this story, and then they're like, okay, maybe we just need to redraw the writing board because we don't know what we want to do for season 3 of Mando. So we're going to do 2 episodes of him trying to get Grogu in this other series. And then we can get back to what season 3 is going to be. So like, with that being said, like they're already sort of, I don't know if there's like that. I think there's a lack of consistency within the shows, and therefore could present that sort of confusion again with the movies as well, because they don't have a written plan. That's what they didn't have with the sequel trilogy.
And I think that Disney's kind of intervening too much. I mean, as many people have watched Mandalorian, they've made far more money on Grogu sales than they have in any of their streaming services.
Yeah.
So this is theory that a lot of Star Wars content creators have talked about quite a bit, and there's been leaks and stuff and rumors and so on. So the veracity of it, I can't say. I truly do believe Jon Favreau intended on Grogu not being in season 3, at least for a majority of the time. But that they said, no, we need him there because people are going to watch the show for Grogu. We need the views, and we need to be able to continue to sell toys. But when you go and watch the show, you see him get added into Book of Boba Fett. But then you watch season 3, and Grogu doesn't really do anything. He's kind of just there for the vast majority of the show. He has a very small scene that was almost all CGI and had like 5 characters for about 2 minutes when they did the flashback scene.
Yeah.
Right? And for the most part, he was just like following Din around, had like no character development. So to me, it appeared he was not really written into the main script, but added in later as an afterthought. And you just kind of followed around. And until the finale, you don't really see him do much until he actually saves Din. Yeah. So I think a lot of season 3 was rewritten to put Grogu into it because of that lack of vision. Or maybe Jon Favreau had that vision, but Disney steps in. And I think that Disney kind of needs to take hey, if we're giving you this project, this is your project, but not so much push their agendas for how they want to make money. Let it be a good story. You know what I mean?
And I see. So let's just move on to that, because next on our outline is the Disney Plus shows. So let's just sort of spitball into that as well, because I think that what they got with Grogu has sort of this like interesting prospect. Like, here is a Yoda-like. What's their species? Do you know?
They don't say.
Okay, they have a Yoda-like, right? And what is interesting is that you're going to have a mixture of Grogu is a Force wielder, but also a Mandalorian, and I think that that prospect is really good. Sorry, by the way, Mando season 3 spoilers. If you're listening to this, please,
yeah, a little late.
Yeah, please chill. But like you have that mixture of the two, which is really really cool because I don't think there's a lot of examples of Mandalorian Jedi or Mandalorian Sith. There's 2, right? And so. Yep. So yeah, I mean, you have that aspect going into the Disney Plus shows where hopefully Grogu does get that character development that was clearly lacking in this season 3 to sort of become that force wielding Mandalorian, right? And I don't know how you do that. It's kind of hard when it's a Yoda-like and he's super small and like whatever, but we'll see.
The big challenge is his maturity. I don't know that Grogu was ever intended to be written for a show that would go on 6 seasons is what's being rumored right now.
Yeah.
Because you're stuck with this guy who's 50 years old, lives to be 900. Yoda claimed that he was training Jedi for 800 years and died at 900. So within the next 50 years, Grogu needs to go from, or if he follows Yoda, assuming he's the only sample we have from the species.
Yeah.
The next 50 years, he needs to go from an infant, essentially, maybe toddler, you could say, an unspeaking toddler, to a Jedi Master.
Oh, I laugh at that.
For a regular person, that's fine.
Yeah.
But he is unable to speak. And I felt that this season gave an opportunity for Grogu to start maturing. And hopefully by the time we see season 4, maybe there's a little time gap and he's a teenager or a kid or something. But when they were saying like, you can't be a Mandalorian unless you can speak or whatever it was, I was like, oh, perfect opportunity for Grogu to say this is the way or the way this is or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And be able to start growing a little bit. You know what I mean? But we're 3 seasons in and he's the exact same character he was day 1, but he can push a little bit longer with the Force and not get as sleepy.
Yeah.
So I think that they're at a challenge there because if they wanted to become a Mandalorian fighter that's not just shooting paintballs at people, / a Jedi or a Force user, because, if you're not on the Jedi code, you're not technically a Jedi, then they've got to start growing him up. Yeah. And when they start doing that he's not going to be as cute and the toy sales aren't going to be as high. So it's just a challenge that Disney's at right now and that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are at of how to make our story really good and our characters progress, but also keep people watching the show and keep people buying the toys. So it's a weird state.
Yeah, so speaking of Mandalorian season 3, it wasn't about Din Djarin, right? Like,
no, it's the Bo-Katan show.
It was a Bo-Katan show, and again, sort of a misstep for me. Like, full disclosure, I have not watched the Clone Wars, like all the episodes. Watched season 1 and some of season 2. I've also have not really dabbled into Rebels a lot, so I know that she is there in both of those shows.
Okay, that's actually a conversation I've wanted to have with someone. So I've seen all of those several times. So what impact did Bo-Katan have for you in the show?
So that's the thing. Like, live action Star Wars is where my love is, and they established. I was never a Boba Fett fan. Like, Boba Fett is 2 scenes in the original trilogies. He's a nobody really, right? So I didn't like the Boba Fett show just because I don't care for this character so much. And so they finally made a live action Mandalorian that I loved. And then they took it away for season 3. That was my problem, is that I think Bo-Katan is a very interesting character. I don't know her sort of lore,
her
backstory, but I still want the Mandalorian to be focused on Din, and that's just that just wasn't the case in this season. And also for the Darksaber to be this huge thing, to just be broken in one scene against Moff Gideon. Spoilers, he comes back. How come the Darksaber was such a big looming thing in season 2, and then it's a looming thing in season 3, but it's just a toy, it seems. Like Din's like, oh, you beat me, whatever, here, you could have it back, and then bam, it's gone in 1 second. So I don't know.
Now imagine you're me and you grew up watching Clone Wars, and the Darksaber was this awesome weapon that's wielded through several seasons, and then it shows up in Rebels and Darth Maul has it, who he had taken it at the end of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And he still has it, and now he's in control of the Darksaber, and Sabine Wren, who's a Mandalorian rebel, she takes it and she gives it to Bo-Katan, and Bo-Katan tries to lead Mandalore, but it fails because she didn't earn it properly. So then you get to see it in Mandalorian, like, awesome, we can finally figure out who the ruler of Mandalore is going to be. And then they're like, actually, all the rules that you thought about it can all just be getting rid of by technicality, and it doesn't actually matter that much. And now we're just going to break it by dude crushing it in his fist. So you're upset about the Darksaber. Okay, you have no idea.
But like, no, I totally get that, because like I was having a conversation with Joe, who's a member of our podcast, and he knows the history of the Darksaber as well. He's watched all the Clone Wars. He's watched most of Rebels, I believe. And like, he was like, are you kidding me that they just literally just like Din Djarin was just like, here, have it back, and then they just broke it? Like,
I personally believe we are going to see the Darksaber again. A lightsaber is really just the crystal that's on the inside.
Yeah.
The outside doesn't really matter. It can take any casing that it wants. And if the emitter is what that piece in the saber is called, that actually shoots the energy out of the saber and into the air, I guess you could say. If that gets crushed, it's rendered useless, but you still have the crystal on the inside. So if the crystal was harvested or found in the depths of Mandalore, like Gollum style, finding the ring, then I would not be surprised if we see someone reforge the Darksaber again.
Yeah.
And honestly, with Grogu throwing up his force wall, it very well could have been protected from that blast that we got from the ship as well. She could have picked it up for all I know.
Yeah,
so that could always be written
know.
back in.
Yeah, it can be.
It might be dumb. The way they do
it. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, so speaking of the animated series, are the animated series in a good spot? I've full disclosure, I haven't watched them, but are they in a good spot at this point? Like the Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi, stuff like that.
I think that the animated series right now is the healthiest part of Star Wars. No. Disney took over Star Wars when Clone Wars was still in progress, and they canceled Clone Wars, which was the first sign that we should know something was wrong with Disney. But they canceled Clone Wars because it was on Cartoon Network at the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They started airing their episodes on Disney XD, and they started doing okay, and they put them on Netflix and whatnot, and they did really well on Netflix. But they came out with Rebels, which was a really bad show for like a season and a half. But in the last 2.5 seasons, turned out telling some of the best stories. I was never a big fan of the animation style, and it was more childish than I liked. But Clone Wars, granted, was childish as well. But when I watched it, I was a kid.
Yeah.
Rebels came out when I was in college, so of course some of those things bothered me. But the recent stuff has been really good. The last season that Disney released of the Clone Wars was just absolutely fantastic. They kind of amped up the animation style.
Yeah.
Used the same animation, but just made it better. And it looks absolutely amazing. And it kind of leads right into and concurrent with Revenge of the Sith, the final season does.
Yeah.
If you have not seen the last 4 episodes of Mandalorian, even if you don't plan on the Clone Wars, you need to watch those 4 episodes and then watch Revenge of the Sith. They actually have someone's made a cut that has Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith going on concurrently.
Really?
It's at the same time, and there's some common scenes. It's really cool.
Oh, that is cool.
But that was done really well. So shortly after they finished that, they introduced the Bad Batch, which is a group of clones that have mutations that make them more valuable in that final season of Clone Wars. And they gave those groups their own, or that squad, their own show. Season 1 was fairly interesting. It was a little slow at times and had some side questy missions, but it had 16 episodes, so it has room to do that. Like Mandalorian, if it has side quest missions, you're like, I got 4 left. Awesome.
Yeah.
But Bad Batch is an animated show. You've got room for that, and it was really good. The storytelling, the time you get with the characters helps out a lot compared to only having 8 episodes with Mando. And then season 2 is absolutely fantastic. Some of the most emotional scenes I've had in Star Wars in a long time were from season 2 of Bad Batch. But Tales of the Jedi was absolutely fantastic. It was just, I think it was 8 short episodes. If you haven't seen those, strongly recommend.
I think season 2 is right around the corner as well.
Yeah, season 2 will be coming out, I believe, this summer. And then Star Wars Visions, which is like anime, which I'm not an anime guy. But that style of art was really good last year, especially a few of the episodes. Some of them were duds. But the season 2 comes out May 4th, Thursday, actually. So the day this episode's recording. So the animation side is really strong. Dave Filoni, I think, is in charge of that for the majority. He does not work on every project hands-on, but he's definitely kind of like the George Lucas or the Kevin Feige, I should say, of Star Wars in that aspect. And it's done really well. It's exciting stuff. If you like animation and you don't mind seeing it in a cart, I strongly recommend all of them.
Okay.
There's not one that I would say is bad. Rebels is kind of hard to get through. Rachel and I are watching seasons 1 and 2 right now because I'm just telling you, you're going to need to watch it if you're going to watch Ahsoka. The Ahsoka show coming out. You'll have to watch Rebels. There's almost no way getting around it. Otherwise, you're not going to have any of that time with those characters that are going to be like the main character of the show.
Okay. Well, I guess that's my next show to watch. So.
Yeah. And you can watch Rebels without watching Clone Wars. You just won't really know who Ahsoka is when you get to it.
Well, I know who Ahsoka is because I'm a season and a half into.
Yeah, but she's the most annoying character in the show in this first season and a half.
well, regardless, I know who she is.
Right, she develops. That's one of the best parts about Clone Wars is how much she develops over the seasons.
Yeah,
and how she becomes the character you hate in the first season, and by season 6 and 7, she's just like your favorite character in Star Wars. So. But I think animation is doing really good.
That's good. Glad that it's in a good spot. I definitely should start giving it more watch. So, all right. I think we've touched on Mando enough. Okay, so you and I are, we've had private conversations, and I think we've mentioned it a couple times already, where Andor stands. That show, again, I think it is some of the best Star Wars since like Rogue One, which stars Andor, Cassian Andor.
I think it's better than Rogue One, personally.
I
liked Rogue One.
Rogue One is really high as far as Star Wars is concerned, but Andor, man, what a show! I cannot wait for season 2. I think that again we've talked about it already, but like Andor is a huge risk. It is not focused on the Jedi and Sith and for its betterment, right? Like it did such a phenomenal job telling a wonderful story about how the rebels came to be, and it was sort of this like political crime drama too that is like surrounding it too with Senator
Bail Organa.
Yeah. Not
and
Mon
Mothma.
Mon Mothma. There we go. I was thinking Moff Gideon for some reason.
Yeah, Bail Organa wasn't in it.
But yeah, like thoughts on what's next for Andor in season 2 coming up.
The thing Andor does so well is that it does the show don't tell. You know what I mean? Like Mandalorian tells you what it's trying to say by explicitly showing things. You know what I mean? Whereas Andor just did such a great job with the themes of the show and building characters that were in really tough spots, like not having the Jedi, not having the Sith. You felt that they weren't there, but you also felt the gaping hole of no hope that was left in the galaxy without having the Jedi, and the overwhelming fear of the Sith and the Empire, and just the control that they had without ever even showing them. Right. And I think that's just what the show did so well for me. Season 2 is going to be really interesting. Season 1, I felt really led into just building the characters and the setting. Like it was almost like this a prologue comes first, right? Yeah.
Prologue.
Yeah. It was almost like a big prologue. Like Andor wasn't even a rebel yet through this whole entire show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we did get to see some of the rebellion with Luthen and his merry gang of bandits, I guess you could say. And Luthen was an amazing character as well. We could talk about him for several episodes of the podcast. But what we're going to see with season 2 is they are essentially now 4 years out from the Battle of Yavin. The first 3 episodes are going to take place 4 years out. The next 3 years away. The next 2 years away. And then the last 3 lead into
Rogue
the
One.
Battle of Yavin. Yeah, Rogue One. Yeah. Exactly. So I'm really excited to see what they do. There was a leaked trailer that I saw. It was very shady with some guy on the phone at Star Wars Celebration. But there have been a lot of rumors, actually, which is interesting. Like, they've already kind of announced that Andy Serkis is coming back. His character of Kino Loy, who I thought we assumed died in the prison.
Yeah, because he couldn't swim.
He couldn't swim. Yeah. Apparently, he did not jump. So I'm hoping that we just see like a torture scene of the Empire trying to torture him and get info about where Andor is.
Yeah.
Which would be honestly so amazing because he doesn't know. He has no idea who Andor is. He didn't know he was a rebel or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
And for him to make that sacrifice for everybody, knowing that he couldn't get out, and then to sacrifice for everyone so that they could escape, to be left behind and tortured until death probably for information that he doesn't know the answer to, just makes his sacrifice and the tragedy of his character so much better. So if they do bring him back, I hope it's something like that. If they bring him back and he's like alive somehow and just like living on Coruscant, I'll be like, what?
What are you doing?
But I'm super excited for that show. I mean, there's a lot of speculation you can throw out.
Yeah.
But I just think we're going to see a lot more of Andor, committed to the rebellion based on how that show ended. Yeah. With his mom, or his mother figure, sacrificing herself for the rebellion.
Exactly.
So I think that show did such a great job of turning someone who just was working for themselves and his own personal interest and saying there's no hope in fighting the Empire, so why fight? That show turned him into someone who now is so devoted to the rebellion and to the cause that he'll do things that are morally questionable for the cause. Yeah. And he's going to do what has to be done. Yeah, and I really hope that season 2 takes that dark turn where he's going to be like, look, I know what I'm doing is wrong. I know I shouldn't be killing these people who are just working at their 9-to-5 job. They just happen to be employed by the Empire.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it because this is what has to be done for this rebellion to win. 100%. So I really hope that we get a really dark season. And that's what I asked for when they started doing Disney Plus shows. I said it on our podcast like 2 years ago. I would love to see all these different shows that feel dramatically different from each other and tell different kinds of stories in different times of the galaxy. But if it's a really good show in a Star Wars setting, I'm going to be happy. Yeah. It doesn't have to feel like Star Wars to have the Force. You could tell me a story about a smuggler. I'll be happy. Yeah. But if it's a good 100%. Story in that show or in that setting, I'll be excited. I think Andor does a great job of that.
Andor did a wonderful job of that. And just like, I think the level of care that they took for just the direction of even the actors, like the acting in that show was just top notch. And we've never really seen acting that good in the Star Wars universe. And so just like the level of care and the level of understanding and the level of drama that they were able to bring to the table in a setting that we love, right? Like the Empire is looming, right? And you have just this like small story that is going to blossom into this big rebellion, right? And that's what just sold me so much on Andor. It didn't need the theatrics. It had a couple of those episodes, right? It had the eye, right, where there was meteors going around, around the world. It had that scene where they had the tractor beam on his ship, and he let out those explosives out of his ship, and it blew up, and it was just awesome looking. They had those theatrics, but that was the sideshow to the grounded sort of story within the Star Wars universe. Go ahead.
And all of those scenes had weight on the overall story. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like in The Mandalorian where you go fight a dragon that kidnapped a kid and somehow doesn't eat him overnight and just has been waiting. But, you have those action scenes in Mandalorian, but they have no or very little, they have some impact, but very little impact on the story. Everything we saw in Andor has a purpose of driving forward the plot or growing the characters further to the point that we're going to see later on in the season. And that's just what the show does so well at. And I enjoyed really every aspect of it. I mean, just every moment mattered in some way, shape, or form. And it had a vision of what it wanted to accomplish through the season, and everything they did in each episode drove forward that point. And that's the kind of storytelling I like to see.
And what's really promising about this show is that we know the ending, right? We know that it does eventually get to this point of the rebellion getting those plans.
And it doesn't matter.
But it's about like them filling in the gaps of the story. But it's grounded, and it's not focused on the Jedi. It's not focused on the Sith or for the lack of Jedi, right? Because this is not really a moment where Luke Skywalker is doing his thing, right? Like it's not there yet,
And that's why I don't get when people say that doesn't feel like Star Wars. Like, yeah, there's no Force, you don't have what makes Star Wars, this sense of hope and the sense of family. Like Star Wars was built on family, like the whole saga is built on the Skywalker thing. I'm like, you're right. But this story tells a story in this time at this place. And in these parts of the galaxy and in this time, there aren't going to have that sense of hope. There are no Jedi to show the Force. There are 2 Sith. Like, this is just what the galaxy would be. Do you want it to just not tell the story because it's not the story you're used to?
Yeah.
Because this, I think this is a very, if Star Wars was real, which is not, of course, like I have to remind myself that sometimes. But if Star Wars were real, this is what it would look like at this time in the galaxy. You know what I mean? Very political, very trying to manipulate your standing in an empire that you don't think is doing the right thing, but you have to do what's best for yourself. Like all these things going on and the change of regime, it makes sense of what would be happening.
There's no... It has to be political at this point because there's no existential threat to Darth Vader and Palpatine. Yes. So they need to make it a show that is grounded in like just these small little vignettes of like, I mean, you think about this, like this is what happened. This is what's happening with Andor and everything with him. There's another story that is similar to this that is happening on another part of the galaxy, but the Empire is impacting, and you don't need lightsabers to tell that story. You don't need the Force. Like the Force is there because it's everywhere, but you have these grounded characters trying to live under an oppressive regime, and it's good storytelling. It
tells
really
an awesome story that Star Wars has never told before.
Yeah,
exactly. Star Wars has always had the main characters, the Jedi and the Sith, and it tells a really good story about the other guys that are impacted by all these things the Jedi and the Sith do. Yeah. It's great. I love it.
It's not
I can't
Star
stop
Wars.
saying enough great things about it.
It's Star Wars.
Yes. And when every story tells the same story about the same characters, it makes the galaxy so small.
Yeah.
I felt
why did Tatooine? Why does Tatooine still need to be a thing? Like,
no,
it's in every.
I don't want to see Tatooine ever again.
It's like in every single property that they come up.
It's the most boring planet. Nothing happens.
It's like that.
It's just sand everywhere.
Just sand.
I hate sand.
All right, so apparently I need to watch Rebels because are you getting excited for Ahsoka? So like, let me set the stage. We love Andor, right? We also love The Mandalorian despite its faults in season 3, but for all intents and purposes, like the good Star Wars has been Jedi-less recently. And now they're bringing back the lightsaber. They're bringing back the Jedi into the fold here with Ahsoka. Like, are you excited? Are you hesitant? Are you ready for it?
This is probably the only Star Wars project that I am not hesitant about whatsoever.
Okay.
And it's essentially for this reason. Dave Filoni has been given complete control on this show. And he created Ahsoka, and it was his character from the beginning. And if he knows the ins and outs of a character, I'm sorry, I should say it this way. He knows the ins and outs of the characters, of this character specifically, better than anyone could of any other character. The time frame being in shortly after Return of the Jedi is the only thing that I wonder what they're going to do with that. There were some really awesome books that were called Heir to the Empire trilogy that took place shortly after Return of the Jedi. They talked about how Thrawn tried to restart the Empire. And I think that the one thing that this might do is try to do an all roads lead to the sequel trilogy kind of thing, where they just are going to try to point all of this towards the eventual sequel trilogy. But that's the only fear I have with it. I think that the story of Ahsoka is just such an amazing path and journey that she's been on from the moment she became Anakin's Padawan to where she. I don't want to ruin Clone Wars for you. I can't say it until whatever the thing that happens at the end of Clone Wars, and to where she eventually joins the rebellion fight. It's just an amazing story, and her journey that she's going to be going on. Again, I don't want to ruin Rebels for you if you do end up watching it. Is essentially looking for a lost Jedi that she was friends with, and the possibilities of what's going to happen with the amazing characters like Thrawn. I mean, just the list of characters alone that you have of Thrawn, Ezra, Sabine, Ahsoka, that we know we're going to have at least those 4, as well as these dark side users. I'm very interested to see how they're going to be used in the show. I just think it's going to be a very hard thing to mess up, and I trust Dave Filoni too much for him to ruin a show that is going to be difficult. Like, I thought Kenobi would be difficult to ruin, in my opinion. I know you like it, but I don't have the faith in Deborah Chow that I have in Dave Filoni. So I'm very excited about this show.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it too. Like, you know, despite my love for Andor and like Rogue One, like I'm itching to get a Force wielder back. Like I do like the theatrics of Star Wars a lot, so I'm interested to get that back as well. And so this show is incredibly exciting for me, especially like season 3 of Mando again was a little rough for me, and then also the Book of Boba Fett was just trash. Let's call a spade. And then just like, you know, Andor squeezed in between those being just the best. Like I'm still, all 3 of those there are not Force wielders, right? Like I loved Obi-Wan, but I'm excited to really dive into a different. Yeah, okay, she was around for the animated stuff, but for me, I'm not akin to Ahsoka. So like I'm really excited to explore just a new character. And so I'm definitely going to put in, before this show comes out, which is in August, I believe, I'm definitely going to put in the time to finish Rebels. I think I get that done.
Strong recommend.
But yeah, I'm really, really, really looking forward to it. So
I do worry about one thing.
Yeah.
And it's the lightsaber combat again. Her episode in The Mandalorian, her combat was just really weird. I just hope they bring in a choreographer that can really make this combat be sold a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's going to be a lot of lightsaber fights in this. And from the trailer, what I saw, it looked pretty good. But if they don't look like masters with what they're doing, and it's just like people swinging around sticks again, if it looks like they're swinging around props, that'll be hard for me to watch. Yeah. So that's the only thing I would say I worry about.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Like, maybe they need to bring, like, I don't know, John Wick choreographers or something. Like,
well, I mean, just the guy they had for the prequels is still doing the same job. Just bring him in.
Yeah. I mean, I love the prequel fights. I mean, yeah. Anyway, all right. Let's round off the show with this. What is your biggest hope for the future of Star Wars?
My biggest hope is that they explore the Old Republic. That we get a Darth Revan story. Do you know who that is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the Knights of the Old Republic, and this is the time frame of the Old Republic. I grew up reading those books, and just some of the stories are absolutely amazing. I recently reread not Revan. I can't remember his name also. Revan would be interesting, but oh my gosh. Give me 1 second.
Who are you talking about?
The Sith that invented the rule of 2.
Darth Pelagius?
No, Plagueis was Palpatine's master.
I know.
Okay, I'll just look it up real quick for me. 5 seconds. Rule of 2 Sith. Darth Bane. Thank you. Okay.
Bane. Okay.
I would love like a Darth Bane trilogy of movies. There was 3 books. If I were to be able to pick one greatest hope, it would be a Darth Bane trilogy. Now, I would personally want it to be rated R because
I'm with you.
His story is just such a dark story. He grows up in the Sith Empire, and it's just like a brawler. And eventually, he just like is fighting these people in a mining camp as a Sith slave, and just shows so much power that the Sith imagine he has to, and like prediction in his fights, that they're like, you have to have Sith or Force sensitivity, and they recruit him to be a soldier, or something along those lines, and just he rises up the ranks and eventually becomes the greatest Sith Lord. Essentially, or probably ever, at least physically, maybe not as politically calculating as Palpatine. But his story is just amazing, and how he destroys all the other Sith to put all the power of the Sith Empire into 2 people. It's an absolutely amazing story, and I would love to see that explored. Or just something, even just have animated shows or a movie saga set in the Old Republic. It's a very, very large time span. Thousands of years is the Old Republic alone. So I doubt that they could tell that whole story, but just something set in there where they somewhat adhere to the books. I know that they'll never stick closer to it. No movie ever does. But I would love to see something in that time frame.
Okay. So I have some desires. I would like Obi-Wan show where he just goes on adventures with the small Leia. Like it does it, like when you get this aspect of at the beginning of A New Hope that Princess Leia has a bigger relationship with Obi-Wan Kenobi, in my opinion, than is sort of laid out within the trilogy.
There's a lot of people that would argue with you about that.
Maybe, whatever.
Just from one line. They just say that she says, "You fought with my dad in the Clone Wars," or from my father in the Clone Wars. People just take that line and imagine that she's never met Kenobi before and that she had to introduce herself to him.
Yeah, I mean, true. But
I personally don't adhere to that.
But I mean, there's a whole show that is in the universe now that thwarts that thought.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But like, I would love just small little vignettes, like adventures with them. I thought that their dynamic, as sort of this like, father-daughter figure, in Obi-Wan was really fun.
Almost like fun uncle kind of thing.
Yeah, sort of. Jake, Qui-Gon Jinn is one of my favorite Star Wars characters, and I would love to have sort of a backstory of where he's from. I think there's some books on him.
Did you watch Tales of the Jedi?
No, I haven't. So
he's got 3 episodes just about Qui-Gon Jinn.
All right. Well, I would love more than 3 episodes. I love Qui-Gon
absolutely.
Jinn.
Me too. I think he's the epitome of what a Jedi should be.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters. And my last hope is that I really hope they fix Finn. The
character?
Yeah, the character.
Yeah.
Like the fact that like you just throw in this nugget that he's like this Force sensitive person in Rise of Skywalker, and then you do nothing about it, and he's just like some of the characters from The Last Jedi are really awesome, and they're just second to everything in Rise of Skywalker. Like I just want them to fix those characters because I think
Finn was thrown away.
Yeah. I mean, Go ahead.
He was the number 2 in. I'm sorry. He was the number 2 in Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And then every episode, I mean, Return of the Jedi, he just gets thrown on a side mission.
Yeah.
That ended up literally. I mean, he's not even
born in Return of the Jedi, so.
Or I'm sorry, The Last Jedi. In The Last Jedi, he was thrown on a side mission.
Yeah,
that had no impact on the story whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then in Force Awakens does nothing. So yeah,
exactly.
You mean in the upcoming Rey movie, you want to see something happen for him?
Or just something. Like I thought he was a cool character. I don't think John Boyega is super excited to come back. It doesn't seem like it.
He had said he would never come back. Recently, in an interview, he said that he's content with where things have been, and that he's open a door to that. So
yeah,
who knows?
So I mean,
money can do amazing things.
We'll see.
Can forgive a lot of sins.
Yeah. So I'm kind of hoping that they fix him because, like, I mean, I think it would have been awesome if, like, not necessarily that they get romantically involved, but that like, Finn and Rey were the 2 that would have like restarted the Jedi, and that's not happening in the slightest. So I'm just hoping that I'm hoping that Finn gets his due at some point because I like that character. So those are my biggest hopes. Anything else on the state of Star Wars? You got final closing words?
I would just say that if you're a diehard Star Wars fan, you probably have your mind made up. But if you're a fan like Mike or others who just like Star Wars, consume what you like. Things you don't have to watch. Mm-hmm. And I think that you can give everything a shot. And that's what I'll be doing. I mean, I'll be watching everything, of course. But I think there's going to be enough content coming out with Star Wars that there's going to be some things you like and some things you don't. And I think that's fine. I hope that they continue to do that. Make Andor. Not everyone's going to like Andor. Not everyone likes a slow build, slow burn story. I do.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will just say, you know what, I like this one, I don't like that one, so I'm gonna watch this one.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Star Wars is gonna be going forward. So I'm really excited though. I think there's a lot of good projects out there. Only thing we didn't mention was the Dawn of the Jedi movie. That
okay.
Have you heard about that?
I haven't.
Okay. So Star Wars Celebration, they announced 3 movies. The Rey movie. This is gonna be the next one that comes out.
Yeah.
In 2025. And then unannounced time frame is the movie done by Dave Filoni. It's going to be a live action movie that culminates Ahsoka, Mandalorian, Skeleton Crew show that's going to be coming out soon. All those shows are going to be combined into his movie. And then the other is The Dawn of the Jedi that goes back several thousand years. I think it was like 15,000 years to when the Jedi first were born, essentially, or first created. So I'm excited about that as well. The books were really interesting. I don't know how closely they're going to hear to it. From what they described in their like little discussion forum that they had on stage, it seems pretty similar to what the book said. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of content coming out over the next 10-ish years. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I think I'll just end with, I think we may have understated it, but there needs to be a clear vision going forward, and everybody needs to be working together, because we've already mentioned before, but the original 4 phases of the original 3 phases of the MCU was such, there were some dud movies for sure, but it was such a cohesion that ultimately ended perfectly, I would argue, in Endgame. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing that there's not cohesion in the MCU, and each of the shows are not working well together. Movies are not doing well. The quality has increasingly gone down. And I'm afraid that we're seeing that with Star Wars too, because there's clearly a lack of vision. There's clearly a lack of like, what are we doing with this universe? And I think they got some bits and pieces, some nuggets that really, really give some big hope for the future of Star Wars.
That's the thing.
It just needs to be connected well, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that that's the thing I worry about, is that they've got so many feelers out to see what's working.
Yeah.
Hopefully after these 3 movies, which I think are honestly, that's 3 different time frames, I think they're trying to figure out which direction they want to go. So they might see which one performs the best. I hope after these 3 movies, they really stick with something that they figure out this is the story they want to tell, and then tell a great story. So
100%.
That's what I'm hoping for.
100%. Well, thanks, listeners, for checking out this combined episode. All you family at the Rogue Podcast, as well as What the Fun. We thank you so much. Please go ahead and hit all the links down below. Subscribe to each of our YouTube channels. Go ahead and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're at, wherever you're listening to podcasts. Please let us know how we're doing. For Jake, my name is Mike. That was the state of Star Wars. We have big hopes for what's coming next. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
And may the 4th be with you.
True. This is releasing on the 4th. Yeah.